Alright, this should be live. And I'm going to. Well, I guess I'll start off by saying hello, everyone. And I'm assuming most people aren't going to be here yet, so this is just going to be me talking for a second and explaining what's going on. So, this is about the Hydrasynth 2.0 update. This update's been a long time in the making, and there's a lot going on under the hood here, so I wanted to just do a live stream where I could kind of field some questions as well as provide some details and some tips and tricks about what's going on in this update. I'll probably rehash a few things as people fill into the stream and try to explain some things. If you notice that my hands are going across here and up here, it's where my typing keyboard is, and I'm going to be sharing some things around and trying to see what's what. So as far as the Facebook comments in this stream right now, I cannot see who it is that's commenting just yet. I'm going to try to arrange some things and hopefully clear this stuff up a little bit. Let me see if I can click on this link and make sure I don't get feedback. Yeah, okay, so I can see there's Thorsten in there. All right, nice. And let me also just ensure that everything is running smooth. It looks like we should be good. So let's get to some audio test real quick. I'm just going to play the synthesizer. If you're in the chat, please let me know how it sounds. We're going to try to make sure that it's not clipping and that everything sounds smooth. How's this sound? Just go ahead and comment. Let me know that you're here, that you're hearing it, and let me know if it's too loud, too quiet, if it sounds like it's breaking up or rough. This is a pretty smooth patch, so you shouldn't hear any real breakup or anything. There should be just a tiny bit of key click. This is actually my take on the everything in the right place patch. Just don't ask me to play the song. It's not going to happen. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I see that Michael installed StreamYard, so that's good. So I can actually see his name on there, so that's great. Alright, so let's get into this a bit. I'm going to make my Facebook window just a little bit bigger so that I can see these. So let's start off with the goods. First off, I want to go ahead and say thank you everybody who's watching and who's chiming in here. It's going to make the stream way more interesting to people who watch later on and everything else. If you have any questions about this update, about how things work, whatever, don't hesitate, throw it in the section, no matter how silly it is, whatever, and I'll see what I can do to kind of help clarify things and make it a little bit easier to understand. One of the things that I want to get into first is the voice modulator, because that's one of the biggest changes. So voice mod in here, when you go into your voice menu, and let me pull this up too so I can punch right up in here and you can see it nice and close. When you go into the voice menu, you're going to go to your third page, and when you're in your third page, you have voice mod. Now there's two different types of voice mod in here. You have the regular voice mod, then you have the unipolar voice mod. When you're in unipolar, essentially nothing's going to go negative, right? So really at that point you're going to be up around what is it, like as if you were at 64, I believe. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, and if not, Glenn will chime in and yell at me. But you'll notice here that I am using a lot of really small modulation amounts in here, and just a few of these voices are going to go into higher amounts, but I'm still pretty low here, and that's because this patch is not like some wild crazy patch. it's a really subtle patch sound, right? But what that allows you to do when you have these kind of smaller modulation amounts is it makes things sound a little bit more realistic to how a vintage analog synth would sound. You know, usually it's not something super drastic unless your synthesizer's broken and it's unplayable. Then it's going to be fairly small modulation amounts. One of the tricks that I love doing here is I send my voice mod to the analog feel. And when you send voice mod to analog feel, that means each time you press a key, if you're in voice rotate mode, you're going to get a different amount of the variability of analog feel. That's super useful for kind of really getting that thing where it's, not everything is calibrated the same. Analog feel is already on a per voice basis, and this just adds a little bit more to that. It lets you kind of control that a little bit further. Another thing is this patch in particular is a single oscillator, but if I turn up oscillator 2 here, so now I've got 2 oscillators going at the same time. We can kind of see how the movement is on this patch, but if I press a key again, the movement's going to be a bit different again. So it's going to give me different levels of beating and whatnot across the 2 oscillators, and that gets you in a much more realistic place. Off to the side here, I have a few different analog synthesizers that have that individuality of their voices, such as like the Omega 8, for instance. And when I got that synthesizer, you're talking about, a $6,000 synthesizer. One of the nerdy things that I did was I would sit there and plot it out. I would take just a pen and a notepad, and I would take a tuner to each voice, and I would check the tuning across the octave for each voice and look at how much it would vary across the keyboard and per voice. And because I did that, I can kind of do the same thing on the Hydrasynth now, because I can say, oh, well, I know that my Omega 8 has this one voice that's always like 6 or 7 cents out, while the rest are usually within like 2 or 3 cents. But that one voice being out by that much is kind of cool sounding, and it makes everything kind of pop in a different way as I move through a song or whatever. And you can do that with Hydrasynth now. So it allows you to really get these kind of interesting places that you wouldn't get to otherwise. So I'm going to build one of those sounds from scratch right now and just show you what a difference it can make. So initialize patch here. What we're going to do is drop the oscillator volumes a little bit because I want to use 2 oscillators, okay? And we'll have a third oscillator be the sub, and it's going to be a little bit lower actually. Yeah, we'll keep it a little bit lower. So this is basic, right? That's your normal sound. Now let's go ahead, just with that, we're going to go ahead and a little bit of release and make this thing sound much more organic as it would be, because we like terms that don't actually mean anything. So voice is going to go to oscillator 2, and I have it set to 0. Now I'm going to set up a macro for this. That's going to be mod depth 1, and this is going to be a really small amount, so we'll go to like 2. Okay, so it's a very small amount on this, and this is going to be, we're going to call this the what do we want to call it? Let's just scroll through a little bit here. We'll call it the funk. All right, so now on our voice mod, first thing I'm doing is in my voice section, I'm turning this to rotate, so it's going to make it easy for me to step through my voices. I'm going to go to the voice mod, and I'm going to set some levels. I like to leave my voice 1 at 0 because that's kind of like a baseline, and it just gives me an idea as to where I'm at. And I'm just doing some pseudo random numbers here, but they're all fairly low, and you can do a really large So we'll have voice 10 is going to go pretty high. Voice 10 is going up to 74, while the rest are going to be, pretty much in the sub 30 range, but I'm also going positive and negative. All right. So I have this one voice that's going to be the outlier here, right? And now, if I just play this, everything's the same. But if I turn this up, so some of these voices are going to have that larger detuning, and some of them are going to be pretty straight, right? And I don't even have that all the way up. If I turn it all the way up, there's that outlier right there, I bet. Okay, so we have that. It's all fair and fine, right? We haven't even detuned our oscillators yet. We're going to detune the oscillators just a bit because that's what we do, right? There you go. And we can use that same voice mod to do a lot of other things. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to take my filter down a bit. We'll do something kind of almost memory mogish. So we're going to use the ladder 24 filter. A small comment about ladder 24. I noticed in another video where somebody was recreating a patch, they said that there was no 4-pole filter in here. There is obviously the 24 dB filter. A pole is usually 6 dB per pole. Okay, so 24 dB slope filter is a 4-pole filter. Just a little bit of education on that. I like to take my key tracking down a little bit just because that's what I do, and it's nice. It's a nice thing to do. It kind of rounds off the top end. So now we have this. This is all low, right? And we want to give it just a little bit of the amp envelope. And we're going to shape this envelope. And a really important factor when you're shaping envelopes is the actual curves. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to increase the log amount here. Exponential. Actually, I'm going to take this down, make it a little bit more linear down here. Okay, now here's where it's going to get fun. All right, so I've kept the envelope amount really low on this. It's there to open it up a bit, but it's still really, really low. So we're going to use the voice mod to vary that amount. So all you do is press and hold voice, and I'm going to press envelope 1 amount, and that destination is here, and we're going to give that about 19. Now let's listen to how much that changes per voice. Right? So now each voice has a slightly different amount of that filter envelope, and it really kind of gives it this smooth sound without being too overpowering in places. And it also keeps it from being too predictable. And it's going up and down there, because we have some of those voice mod amounts are in the negative. If you want, you can actually change this to the voice mod positive here, which is unipolar. And I'm going to back off the amount a bit, because if I kept it up, let me show you what happens here. So if it gets brighter much faster when I'm doing this. So we're going to keep this really low. So now we have this little bit where each voice has its own amount of brightness going on there. And of course, we can tie that to a macro. We could tie it to the funk macro so that we have multiple things going on there. That one I'm going to leave outside of the funk macro. The funk macro is going to be really for making this thing super sloppy. All right. So now that we have that, we can also go into our envelope section, and we're going to use the voice mod to change the attack amount. We'll also use it to change the decay amount of that filter envelope as well. And the release amount of envelope 2, which is going to be our amp envelope. All right. So that's going to be 5, 4, and 3. All right. Those are all going on the funk. All right. So mod. So this is 3, 4, 5. And this is the great thing about this, is that you have the ability to really dial this stuff in exactly how you want it to. So I'm actually going to shorten this one a little bit and make this one a bit longer. Okay. So now you're getting this separation on each voice as far as when it's opening, when it's closing. Even though I'm playing all the notes at the same time. And I'll back this out so you can see what I'm doing here. Sort of. Let me go up an octave on my key bed here. So you can see I'm up here. And of course, with that funk all the way up, we're getting a lot of that detune going on. So we can back this off, and it's going to rein that all in just a little bit. So it's just this kind of, again, it's like a natural sort of sound that you would hear on a synthesizer. And there's lots of room for experimentation on this that myself and I'm sure the rest of the test team haven't even tried yet, that I'm really excited for people to try. Earlier today, I got to thinking about ways that I can use voice mod in a way that I hadn't really even considered before. And I might do that right now. It might be a disaster, but it might be cool. So let's check it out. I'm going to turn LFO 5 I've set to off. Okay, so that means that there's it's all going to be just kind of free running, and hopefully this works. I've never tried this before, but I was thinking about it earlier, and I was like, this might work, and it might be really interesting. So I'm going to have it be a saw up, all right? And I'm going to set it really slow, all right? So it's going to be like 8. And I don't know if Glenn or anybody's watching, and if they are, you guys can comment on here and tell me if my thinking on this isn't going to work or if it is going to work. Because I don't know. I was literally just thinking about this today. So I'm going to turn this to a one-shot on. And I hope that this works. I could do it one-shot on, or I could just leave it free cycling. But the idea here is, what I want to do is I'm going to use this one LFO that's going really slowly to gradually increase my my voice mod amounts, all right? So that imagine being in the studio and it's, you know, you had tuned your synthesizer, you hit tune on it, and you stayed in there for a while, and the temperature's changing, everything's getting funky. This will, over time, it's going to make everything kind of go wonky. And because trigger sync's off and it's on one shot, that means it's going to get triggered the first time, and it's going to go all the way through, and then it's going to be done. Now, I could turn that one shot to off. If I have the one shot off and I smoothed it, for instance, if you smooth the saw wave, you'll see that it kind of goes like this. But then I have to also change the phase of it. So let's change the phase here. Let's try this, okay? So now my tuning should be gradually going out, and then it should come back into place. I think that this might work. I don't know. So let's find out. And what I'm going to do is I'll put this on its own macro. And that's kind of more just so I can see if this works. So let's try. So LFO 5 is going to go to macro. macro 1. So LFO5, macro 1. You following with me? Hopefully I'm not nuts. And this is mod slot 6. So macro, here we'll do mod matrix 6. And I can turn this up a good bit here. And let me see where I'm at. I'm like, I have a feeling I'm going to confuse myself on this, but I'm going to call this time. All right. And we'll see if this actually works. I've never tried this. But it could be, I don't see why it wouldn't work. It's got to work. The only thing that I keep thinking of is maybe I re-trigger it somehow and then it's going to start over. It'll keep starting over. But I think it might work. And I could definitely think of ways of doing it with the step LFO and then smoothing the step LFO to have that go on as well. So let me see here. So again, yeah. So LFO5 is going to be turning up the funk macro, right? And so now, if I'm holding this, right, everything's going to stay pretty much the same here. And it's going to take a while for this to happen. We can actually speed this whole process up just to hear what it sounds like. Let's bring this up. I can hear it moving out. And as I keep pressing these notes, yeah, it's starting to vary a bit. And we should be able to even see it kind of move. Especially if I find that outlier one. Alright, now. Let's see. That's going to be way too fast. Alright, so we have that smooth. Trigger sync's off. Yeah. Oh, we got to turn this up. Here we go. There it is. So we should see this start to move pretty drastically. Yep, slowing down there. And then if I speed this up, the variability of that's going to go up and back. So yeah. So that's working, and we'll just keep this really low. And I believe that should do what we want about it, okay? All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this really, really low, okay? And keep in mind that this is going to affect this knob, but I can still use this knob independently. I mean, I can still have a starting point, right? So, and what we'll even do here is we'll also tie, some panning to this macro. I'm not going to put the panning completely on the voice mod just yet. We'll just do, so like oscillator 1 is going to pan left about 40, right? And oscillator 2 is going to pan right about 40. You know, doesn't have to be exact. And then I'll do some voice mod to the panning as well. So let's do, or actually, you know what? This is one that I really like. I'm going to use LFO1. Let me actually initialize this. So LFO1 is going to go to the filter, right? And in fact, let's do it a different way. I'm sorry. So I'm going to first, let's just turn this to noise. All right. So now this LFO is noise, and we can turn this to single. It won't really matter. And what's going to happen is the voice mod, yeah. So voice mod is actually going to change the level of LFO1. Okay? And that is mod destination 7. So let's go here. We'll add that in. Mod destination 7. And we'll bring that up to like 40. That's probably pretty high. So we're going to have to, yeah, we'll turn this up. This is going to be all the way up. So see, now some of the voices are going to have that scratchy filter sound, and some aren't. Right? There's that outlier. So now let's go ahead and we'll set that according to the outlier. Right there. So we've got this one voice that's going to be really just jacked up. You can hear it in there. And you could use these sorts of modulations all over the place. You can have your voice mod be bringing in just like a touch of a weird modulation that you have somewhere. You can have it controlling your panning, all sorts of great stuff. So now we've got this kind of nice separation left and right, and we've also got, one voice that kind of the tuning gets out of whack, and also when the tuning gets out of whack, it's bleeding the LFO into the filter and that sort of thing, which, you know, the noise into the filter. And if we let's increase this release a good bit. Nice long release. I think I saw somebody requesting that as well. So we'll increase this and just let it kind of. Let me set up my pedal here. So in system setup, I'm going to go to my pedal. Where are we at? Oh, I passed it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be in voice. See? Still new to me too. So here we go. Sostenuto pedal. Okay? And that's going to let me kind of. Release that. So sostenuto is great for just being able to like make these beautiful kind of droning backgrounds while you're playing over top of them. And so we're now in a place that we have control on the per voice level that is allowing you to kind of get that vintage analog sound in a way that you wouldn't have had before, for sure. I can't think of any other hardware synths that do that at all. But more importantly, you can decide how intense you want it or how relaxed you want it, which is awesome. And keep in mind, this works on all the models. I'm using a deluxe here, but this works on all the models, and I'm in a single mode here. Excuse me. One of the really fun things to do is with the deluxe, you can actually have two totally different layers. Excuse me. Two totally different layers with totally different voice mod assignments, right? And voice mod amounts and all that stuff, and then layer them on top of each other and then split them left and right channels. And then it's just really, really crazy how they can evolve and do their own thing. One of the things that I discovered during testing that I was really surprised at, I'm going to bring this back down a bit. So one of the things I discovered that I thought was really interesting, it's a little hard to wrap your head around, is the fact that you have the step LFO, step advanced mode, and you can utilize that as a whole other voice modulator, right? Because that step LFO, there's a step there's an LFO per voice, okay? When you're in poly mode, that means each voice has its own LFO, and because you now have control over every single voice independently, this gets really, really complex and deep. You can, of course, set it to single, and when you set it to single, everything moves all at once. But it gets really interesting when you start using that step advanced mode, so that each key press, not only are you on a new voice with the voice mod, modulating things in a different way, but also that voice is triggering a new step, which can be per voice modulating things in another different way. So it's like having all these different layers of calibrations and whatnot. Like, you don't just have so in the voice mod, you have, let's say you have a step that is positive, okay? Now, with just the voice mod, you have that positive throw, right? That can set an amount for, right? In the mod matrix. And then you could also set it to unipolar, right? Which means that now the middle is here and you're just in the positive range as opposed to, the full throw, right? So that's two values with an amount to it. But then on top of that, then you can throw that step LFO on there as well. And that's a whole third level with that. And then you can make that unipolar as well. So that's a fourth level of variability. And you still have control of the amount of each one of those destinations. So as I said, it gets really heady, and you can really just kind of make it confusing. You can have 16 steps. You could do for each voice in a deluxe. You could do 8 steps. You could do 64 steps and make it constantly different. All kinds of different things. So let's go ahead in here, and I'm just going to set up some pseudo random values here. And now I have these different values set up. And let's do, as an example, I'm going to set it to the mixer, and it's going to be my ring mod, and I'm going to bring it all the way up, and this is kind of more just an example, all right? Ring mod is going to be sourced from oscillator 2 and 3. Let's open up the filter so that we can, let me see where I'm at. Baseline was 28. Okay. So, matter of fact, I'm going to assign that to a macro. Right? Yeah. I like that. So that's going to be my cutoff macro. Just so that I have it in a nice controlled environment. Sometimes it's nice to set those restrictions. So let's open this up. Now keep in mind, when I have it in poly mode, it's not going to make it to the next step until I press that same voice for a second time. So you can go into rotate, right? Or excuse me, alter, and each time I press a note, it's going to be, if I press just one note, it's the same voice, voice 1, over and over again. And we can do, where are we at? Which one did I use? Okay, so that was 4. So I had the wrong one on here. That's my fault. So... let's bring this up a bit. So we're getting a lot more variation there. I can also turn this to single, and if I set my voice to rotate, all the voices are going to get that modulation together. So we're all on step advance here. And what we can do is, just for now, let me make this easy on myself. Where are we at? Steps. I'm going to bring this down to 3, just so I can make it easy when I edit this. See? There's that modulation. So we're on step 1 right now. And let's go ahead and change this back to 8 steps. So we know how it sounds now. And then it's dropped it back down. And now it's going to come back up just a bit. See? So this is all like, these are all per voice modulations that you're getting going on here that are going to give you just a ton of variability in here that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't have had. See, that one voice is jumping way out, right? So let's go ahead and remember I had set that really high. I'm going to set that back down. And I'm going to set it back to poly because I want it to be less predictable for me. Because obviously I'm not going to be counting 16 voices in my head over and over again. So as it starts stepping through, it's going to be kind of more a surprise to me. So really cool way to get some variety and movement there. And remember, ring mod was all the way down, but with that I was able to bring it back up. So let's move on to some other weirdness. I'm gonna just double save that. So I've saved that one in there. Actually, I should probably give it at least a letter on here so that I know that that I have that there, because I may want to come back to that and visit it later. But let's dive into something totally different real quick. Not going to spend too much more time on it because I plan on doing more of these videos throughout the week and trying to share some tips and tricks. But the bit reduction, let's talk about that real quick. I'm going to talk about that in combination with the LFO quantize, because you can do something with this that I love. This is huge for me. So I'm going to set up a wave scan, right? And in here, what I want is some kind of smooth waveforms. So I'll take this out to, you know what, let's go all the way past here. And I'm heading over to some fairly smooth waveforms that I really enjoy using. I'm not using the really high harmonic ones for this because I want it to be really apparent what's happening. So these particle ones are really nice for this. All right. Now, when I scan through here, keep in mind, everything is 24-bit interpolated, so there's like thousands of waves going on, and it's all super, super smooth. Now, the basic idea here is, obviously, if I drop my bit reduction down, I'm dropping it down to like 6 or 7, right? So, think about it this way. If you had a sampler, right, and let's say you had an old school sampler like an SP12 or Emax or whatever it is, right? And you would sample into it. If you sampled at full volume, you would get that 12-bit, right? But more likely than not, you would be close to clipping, and if you didn't want that overdriven clip sound, you'd be sampling a lot quieter. And then you might try to normalize, right? Well, when you start doing that sort of thing, you're actually getting even lower bit rates. So that's where these kind of in-between bit rates on the Hydrasynth are really special, because you're already going to those sorts of sounds. So now when I start playing it like 7 or 6, you can hear a pretty drastic change here. I'll set that first wave to a sine wave, right? Now if it's off, it's smooth, but if I bring this in, so this is, you're thinking already, okay, so like old school wavetable sounds, PPG, all that kind of stuff, right? You can be in that area of like, and then of course you apply filter and it's going to bring some of that down, right? So you could get that. It's still just kind of lurking in the back, and the lower I drop it, the more it's going to come out. Right? That's cool, but here's where it gets way cooler. When you combine that with scanning through your wave scan, right? Which Hydrasynth has this really, really smooth wave scan, okay? So that wave scan, I'm going to use LFO3 to the wave scan, make it unipolar so it's, smoothly going just, top to bottom on it, right? Right? So we have that. We want this to be a triangle wave and a bit slower. So we have this grimy sound. I have the filter is down just a bit, but so you're hearing the griminess of it, but it doesn't quite sound right for that really vintage sound of an old wavetable. It's not quite there yet. So how do you get there? What you do is you start quantizing this LFO a bit, because those LFOs weren't that smooth, right? Now listen to it. So when it's at like 65, you're already starting to hear it. Now, if you have a Hydrasynth at home, definitely mess with this. Jacques, no, it doesn't import samples or anything like that. It's not a sampler. But what we're doing is we're using that lower bit rate to kind of emulate that sound. So if you had something like an SQ80, old PPG, a lot of the older stuff, Prophet VS, that sort of thing, they were a lot lower fidelity, and that's what we're kind of playing with here. So now when the quantize is down to about 65, you're getting these kinds of crunches, right? Right? But listen to what happens when we take it to 33. Now let's give it some release here, because that makes everything more fun. Now, another aspect of that is you still have BPM sync. That still works even when you're quantizing. So if I turn BPM sync on, let's say I set this kind of slow. We'll go to like here. So you can hear it stepping, and you're getting all these in-between sounds, right? So you're getting all these like kind of chopped up wavetable sounds. So your wave list may have 8 sounds in here, but you're getting, the 33 chops in there of that quantize. And you're stepping through them. So when you quantize down even lower, then you start getting some really cool rhythmic patterns. Drop it down even further. And you can set this to single so that they all go together. So, really cool way to get vintage sounds that are also modernized and, you know, more new and just interesting, right? And that's not even hitting it with the cool effects and all that good stuff. You start adding the effects in and doing that sort of thing, and next thing you know, it's just really kind of beautiful. So I'll just as a kind of parting gift, I'll throw some of this out here for you so you can kind of get an idea. Yeah, you know? So, really easy way to just explore something a little bit different, a little bit new. And of course, you start speeding that stuff up, it gets crazy too. And that's only at 7, right? So then you get all that digital garble kind of cutting through the filters and just having so much fun. Yeah, so I think I'll cut this stream short. Today is my wife's birthday, so I should probably hang out with her a bit and get some food. But if you have any questions, head to the official ASM Hydrasynth group. It says official on it. If it's not the official one, I probably won't be seeing your questions or anything. I try to stay out of the other ones, not for any other reason, just, you know, I want to keep things organized, so it makes it easier for me. Much higher bit reduction. Yeah, I kind of sort of just did that, but like, yeah. 2. Let's take this back. So yeah, and keep in mind that when you do this, that bit reduction on here, it works throughout the whole wave scan. Like, you could see the wave is completely... My kids are stomping around upstairs. But yeah, you could see... Super fun. Alright, I'll get lost in this thing. Everybody have a great day. Alright? Peace.